the Overton window, and why moderation feels radical today. Hey everyone, welcome to the Radical Moderate. In today's video, what I want to do is I want to talk to you about a fascinating concept that came up in a recent comment online, and that's called the Overton window. The commentator asked me basically, how can a channel called Radical Moderate even exist? I mean, isn't that an oxymoron? Those two terms are contradictory. And I totally understand that. By definition, moderation falls inside the Overton window, meaning that it reflects the ideas that are socially acceptable. But radical issues, I mean, those are supposed to exist outside the window, correct? Now, how do we make sense out of this paradox then? So let's break it down in this video because things aren't really what they used to be. And spoiler, I think that the Overton window itself has shifted and in fact fractured. As a result, moderation, something that once seemed sensible, has now become a radical stance. Let's start by defining some terms first. What is the Overton window? The Overton window is like a conceptual window in your mind through which you can see the range of ideas that are acceptable in the public discourse at any given time. Its name comes after Joseph Overton, who suggested that certain ideas are considered mainstream and can be discussed freely and openly, while other ideas are deemed way too extreme and fall outside of this window. Now, the thing about the Overton window is that it's not static, it shifts. Ideas that were once in the fringes can move into the mainstream over time, and ideas that were once widely accepted can fall out of favor. We've seen this in issues such as same-sex marriage, drug policy, and environmental concerns. So at any moment in time, the window defines the limits of normal conversation. But here's the problem. Today's political climate is more polarized than ever, and that polarization has broken something fundamental about how the Overton window used to function. Bell curve to bifurcation. Now, in the past, we could visualize the political spectrum as a single bell curve, representing the diversity of thought throughout the population, with most people kind of clustering in the middle around the moderate positions that were considered inside the Overton window. Now, those views outside of the Overton window were the fewer people who held kind of extreme views on the far left and the far right. But what we're seeing today is the collapse of that middle. The center has hollowed out, and our bell-shaped curve has split in the right in the middle in two, and these two groups of people increasingly migrate towards previously more extreme positions. So instead of one bell curve with a robust center, we now have two humps, one on the left of the center and one on the right, which very little in between now exists. And in this environment, it really feels like if you're not on, one of the sides, then you must be on the other. And this shift has profound consequences for how the Overton window operates. So the Overton window itself has bifurcated, floating over these two opposing sides, giving people that belong to each side a separate Overton window, which they can agree as long as they are on the same group, but will disagree with those in the other group. This actually kind of explains a lot about our lack of understanding for each other's perspectives and view of the world. This is the so-called echo chamber that many people have been talking about. We're all in our own little bell-shaped curve and listening to our own silo of information being tainted by the same sets of ideas. And this is also why the old center, which is the realm of moderation, appears kind of isolated now and out of sync with today's political discourse. So if you feel like you don't belong in this world, that may be why, because, what used to be the center and the moderation has now bifurcated into these two separate silos of ideologies that are slightly to the right and to the left of the center, as opposed to be in the middle. Why moderation feels radical today. So this really brings us to this strange reality. Moderates now seem radical. Ideas that would have once been considered kind of balanced or centrist are increasingly seen as out of step because they don't really fit into the new Overton windows that are perched over the two polarized camps that are around today. And here's the thing, if you ask most people who are heavily invested in politics today, they'll tell you that they know the answers to the big problems. I mean, whether it is on the left or on the right, they'll tell you this is the way forward. This is the answer, and that's the policy we need to have. But a true moderate is someone with kind of a commitment to understanding multiple viewpoints, which will start usually by admitting that they don't really have all the answers. And that's part of the reason why moderation kind of feels radical now. In today's world of certainty and ego, saying that I don't know is the most radical thing that you can do. It's kind of reminiscent of Socrates, the man who was considered the wisest man in Athens, not because he knew everything, but because he knew how little he knew. A new theory on the Overton window. So here's the theory I want to propose. The Overton window hasn't really just shifted as it has traditionally done in the past. It's now split. What used to be kind of a broad shared space of moderate ideas has now fractured into two separate windows, each hovering over the increasingly extreme left and right. And the result of that is that most of those people who once stood comfortably in the middle with many to their sides now find themselves without a home. People around them have also been forced to migrate to either side of their ideas, and therefore their ideas appear radical today because the dominant narratives are on both sides have really taken over the conversation. In other words, yesterday's radicals are today's mainstream, and those of us who stand in the middle, embracing the old values of uncertainty, humility, and dialogue, are left looking like the outliers. And this is why the radical moderate exists. The goal isn't to take extreme positions, it's to reclaim moderation as a courageous, thoughtful stance in a world obsessed with certainty. Conclusion: why radical moderation matters. So, if you are feeling out of place in today's political landscape, you're not alone. Moderation isn't about sitting on the fence. It's really about resisting the pressure to conform to one extreme or the other. You know, it's kind of like being forced to pick the lesser evil. So it's about recognizing the limits of what we know, embracing humility, and also searching for real solutions through dialogue and not through division. If that sounds kind of radical to you, well, maybe it is. In a world that's so divided, where the past radicals are the modern leaders, the middle ground can feel like the most rebellious place to stand. And that's exactly what the radical moderate is all about. Let me know what you think about the theory I put forth. I mean, does it really make sense to you? Please comment below. I'd love to hear from you. I will do another video in trying to explain how do we come to moderation. I mean, if the past extremes are the new Overton window, then what is even moderation and who decides? Thanks for watching. And if you're ready to challenge the extremes and also think critically about the middle, make sure that you like and subscribe and share. Let's show the world that being a moderate is the new revolution.